The dark history of tipping culture is unknown to many. While it still has its original form in many countries, the United States has a particularly dark background that took shape in the mid-19th century. Let's uncover how tipping devolved from its original intent to its current-day exploitation of workers in the United States. Tipping in its original form was a token of gratitude that actually went both ways. A business with a particularly great client would often add a bit extra on top of what a client purchased as a token of appreciation for doing business with them and make them more likely to return. While a customer would tip their servers in restaurants to show they enjoyed their service. This way, business kept more clients. Servers would make sure their best clients get even better treatment, and this resulted in a greater experience for all. It fostered better client and business relationships, as well as benefiting both parties equally to be at their best towards each other. In the era of barter trade, and for countless centuries that followed, this was common practice. Across generations, it became the customary approach to business and a gesture of appreciation. People didn't rely on tips for their livelihoods, but they certainly appreciated the extra bonus they brought. It solidified as the way of conducting business, a silent pact of gratitude woven into every transaction. Giving a bad service would most likely mean no tip, but also no returning customer. If you had a rude customer, you'd have the leverage to simply take out your gesture of goodwill, giving the power to the person giving the service rather than the one receiving. This is still the case in many countries. While tips have become less common in businesses and most professions, people will still receive bonuses for a job well done, which is in a way similar to tipping. But when someone is providing you a service like hotels, restaurants, bars, and cafes, a tip for excellent service is a great way to show your gratitude. Even in countries where people are paid in disregard of tips they receive, tips are often still given, as they put in the effort to make the experience better for the customer. By giving tips, you'll make them happy, and next time you return, they will recognize you and provide an even better service, continuing a trend as old as trade itself. In the United States, however, it's looked at quite differently. Servers are not receiving livable wages as a baseline income, but rather rely on those tips to survive. In some cases, these tips will even be shared with the other staff within the restaurant, and some owners have the audacity to take a part in these tips. This could be seen as wage theft, because when a server doesn't get any tip, they are not compensated, and sometimes will have to pay the rest of the staff out of their own pocket, while if they get a massive tip, they will still end up paying a large portion of that as well. This is a double-edged sword, however, but let's come back to that later as it requires a bit more background. You might be wondering why this is really only the case in the United States and not so much in Europe or Asia. And that's because the root of this issue stems from many decades after the United States was founded, meaning that the influence from Europe would not have affected it. Even previous United States territories like the Philippines are not affected by tipping culture in the same way, which is not entirely strange, but it means it's worth a look as to why it's not globally incorporated. To understand why the United States is so different, we have to go back to the mid-19th century, where we started to see how the current tipping culture began to take shape. Rooted in a post-Civil War era marked by inequality, tipping was embraced by business owners in the service industry. After the abolition of slavery, many formerly enslaved individuals found employment in the service industry. However, the owners didn't see it fit to give them livable or even any wages at all. Instead, they would be living off of the tips they received from customers. This meant that it was more beneficial to hire these workers, and for them, it would be better than having nothing. Over the years, the benefit wore off, but the practice remained. And as it went unquestioned, it's now rooted deeply into the service industry in the United States. While you would expect the practice to be improving over the decades that followed, it in fact deteriorated even more. Exploiting your staff in the service industry has become common practice. They deal with the pressure of having to make enough money each day when in fact, most of the variables are not controlled by them. Often even sharing the tips they receive with other employees when those tips are earned by them. As we discussed earlier, some servers have to part with a large portion of the tips while receiving little to no compensation if they don't get tips. Now that we know where the root cause is, it's easy to see how this type of deterioration is possible. The argument some make is that this would incentivize them to work harder and give their utmost effort to each customer to be able to earn as much as possible. However, most people will just tip anywhere from 15 to 25% of the total bill. But they are not obliged to do so. It's in the customer's hands to pay a tip or not. giving them the final say in whether serving them that evening was worth it or not for the server. This sort of business is very volatile, as it could be great some days and absolutely horrendous on other days. But the bottom line is that as long as tips are required to give them a living wage, they're in a rough spot every single day. Most people don't last long in this industry, as any other job generally comes out more beneficial and less stressful down the line. It's the sad reality of the United States tipping culture, and whether this will ever change or not is a question only the future will answer. So far, it's not looking like improvements are coming their way. Most employers are completely fine with continuing exploitation of their workforce, as it gives them a higher profit. Some also don't have much of a choice, as they don't always have great profit margins to begin with. Although this would feel like a cop-out, as in any business you should value your employees and pay them enough to sustain their life. While I don't think you are in charge of covering their spending choices, they should be able to cover everything they need if they don't splurge their money on unnecessities. While it's a great industry to start, it generally has low growth potential. In some cases, customers might tip higher over time. You're unlikely to out-earn someone in other industries over the long term, unless you upscale the type of place you're working at and continuously find new employment to get higher tips. But this likely also has a cap. It, however, isn't the only industry that has it rough. Businesses nowadays take advantage of the large number of people looking for jobs on top of the high cost of living due to inflation, leaving people with little choice to accept what they can get. We hear people from peeing in bottles to complete their daily requirements or sitting in overheated trucks all day. Tech employees are being fired with no notice by the thousands. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have CEOs earning multi-million dollars a year. While I have no issue with people earning high wages, there is a problem when you're exploiting your staff while making that amount of money. I wonder when things will change, and it certainly feels like change could be coming. There are riots worldwide. People are putting in less and less effort because in their eyes, life is simply not getting any better no matter what they do. And over time, things will have gone down so far that there will be no other option but for change to come. While I'm no advocate for socialism, I'm an advocate for fairness. I'm completely fine with people earning high wages, as long as everyone has their needs met. Exploiting workers is only going to let you go on for so long. In the end, you depend on them just as much as they depend on you, so treat everyone right. Tip the people who go the extra mile for you, and know that whether you're a CEO or a janitor, people don't remember you kindly for your money, but rather for the way you treated them. Thank you for watching. Before you leave, I have been developing Cash Crusade, a financial education mobile game, for the past 3 years, and I'm looking for people to check out the beta. If you're interested and would like to participate, join the Discord, and I'll be sure to send you a link. If you enjoyed the content, please make sure to like and leave a comment if you think tipping culture isn't as bad as I depicted it to be, or maybe you think it's even worse. Until next time, and may your days be filled with gratitude and generosity, much like the tips that have graced the hands of generations.